There's a dispute between Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai as to whether you can consecrate something in error. And Beit Shammai say, look, if it's consecrated in error, it's still consecrated, it's still dedicated. And Beit Hillel take the view, no, something consecrated in error is not dedicated. In other words, the intention counts. And the Mishnah, we're in the third Mishnah of the fifth chapter now, is just now going to take this idea and start to investigate the possibility of swearing to become a Nazir, but not really intending to do so. So what if we don't intend to become a Nazir, but we do? Misha nadar ba Nazir v'nishal chachamim ve'asaro. So someone vowed to be a Nazir, and it sounds as though it sounds as though he's taken this vow under a misapprehension. Maybe he didn't really understand what all the requirements of being a Nazir are. Maybe there's some other reason. So he goes to a sage to be released. So someone vows to Misha nadar ba Nazir v'nishal chachamim. So he vows to be a Nazir. He then goes to a sage. He clearly wants to be released. And what is the sage going to do? Well, in the first case that the Mishnah looks at, the sage actually won't release him. The sage says, no, you're bound. The Mishnah says, va'asaro, that you're bound by this commitment. In this case, the Mishnah rules he has to count the days from the time that he swore. Moneh misha'ah she nadar. So if the sage binds him, he counts his time from the point that he made the vow, which is what we'd expect. Nish'al chachamim v'hitiru. If he asked the sage, but the sage released him. I'm sorry, I've been translating this in the singular, but maybe we should say Nish'al chachamim v'hitiru. He asked the sages, and they released him. Haitalo, so at this point, he's completely released from day one. But now we're going to come back to the question that we've been circling around in the previous chapter. What about an animal that he set aside for his sacrifice? Because when he swore, he dedicated that animal as a sacrifice. The sages have released him. So we've got here an animal which is dedicated erroneously. Yeah, we're going back to the discussion between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. If I dedicate something in error, is it dedicated? So the Mishnah rules. Nishal chachamim v'hitiru, that he asked the sages and they released him. Haitalo v'hema mufreshet. So he'd actually designated an animal for his closing sacrifices. But the animal can go forth and pasture with the herd, i.e., the animal is retrospectively undedicated. It's retrospectively cleared. So the Mishnah is going, if you like, with Beit Hillel, as you'd expect. Amru Beit Hillel of Beit Shammai. So Beit Hillel now are going to try to persuade Beit Shammai that they're going to use this example to persuade Beit Shammai that their approach is right. Amru Beit Hillel of Beit Shammai. So Beit Hillel say to Beit Shammai, Atem modim b'zeh, shehu hekdesh ta'ud ve'teitzeh ve'tireh ba'eda. Look, don't you admit here that the dedication was in error? When we dedicated that animal, it was in error. So, and it goes out and it goes forth to pasture with the herds. So by implication, don't you agree with it? Aren't we right? Aren't we right? Amru lahen Beit Shammai. So Beit Shammai are going to respond now with a question about tithing animals. So they're going to bring a different example. Amru lahen Beit Shammai, ein atem modim, b'mi sheta'a v'kara la tishi asiri, v'la asiri tishi, u'le'echad asar asiri shehu mukudash. Don't you admit that if a man but mistakenly calls the 9th the 10th, or the 10th the 9th, or the 11th the 10th, each one is dedicated. Now, this sounds really, really weird. I mean, why would, first of all, I mean, we can agree that if you call the 10th the 11th or the 9th the 10th, clearly you're in error because you can't count. And Beit Shammai seem to know this halacha, but we don't know the halacha. So we need to go to the Sifra. We need to go to Sifra and learn the halacha, and then we'll just come back and we'll understand the Mishnah. First, we need a pasuk. It's actually a pasuk next door to the pasuk that Beit Shammai used to learn the fact that that anything dedicated in error is dedicated. And it's about Ma'aser Behemah, it's about tithing animals. V'chol Masar Bakar Vatzon Kol Asher Yavo Tachat Hashavet. And concerning the tithe of the herd or the flock, anything that goes is under the rod. So we're going to this is the shepherd's crook. We're counting sheep as they go under the shepherd's crook. Ha'asiri ye kodesh lashem. The 10th is going to be holy to the Lord. So we're going to take tithe off the 10th animal. So we need to count accurately 1 in every 10. And you can see, by the way, we can all see that it's easy to make a mistake, right? Easy to make a mistake. So we could get the wrong animal. And the Sifra here, the Sifra is the halachic midrash on Vayikra. It's a very, very ancient source. It's the source for much halacha, which then reappears in the Mishnah. So it's a source, if you like, for the Mishnah. And the Sifra says, Hara Tishi Asiri. You can see the Mishnah quoting the Sifra. Hara Tishi Asiri. If he called the 9th the 10th, Vel Asiri Tishi, or he called the 10th the 9th, and he called the 11th the 10th. Minayin sheshlochtan mukudeshet. How do we know that all 3 are dedicated? So the Sifra is giving us the halacha. If he made a mistake, all 3 of them are dedicated: the 9th, the 10th, and the 11th. And the Sifra is going to prove this from a verse. But the Sifra knows the halacha, and it's going to bring a verse to justify itself. Talmud lomar ha'isiri yeh, and I think, the 10th. How it's getting this from the verse, I don't know. It's easier if we read the whole verse. Kol asher yavor tachat hashevesh. Everything that goes under the star. Ha'asiri ye kodesh lashem. Maybe everything that goes under the staff, okay, the 10th is holy to the Lord. And then the Sifra goes on to say, this only applies when the counting is out by 1. So it applies to the 9th and the 11th, but not to the 8th and the 12th. It only applies when we're out by 1. So let's just keep that in mind now. And let's go back to our Mishnah. So Beit Hillel say, Amar lahem Beit Hillel, Ein asem modim b'mishita v'karala tishi asiri v'asiri tishi ulachad asa asiri shehu mekudash. Don't you agree that if a man in error calls the 9th the 10th, or the 10th the 9th, or the 11th the 10th, each is dedicated? I.e., okay, this halacha about Nazir might suggest that dedication in error is not dedication. But I've got a different halacha from tithing animals that proves dedication in error absolutely is dedication. Beit Hillel then replied rather philosophically. Amru lahem Beit Hillel, lo hashevet kitshor ma ilu ta'avahiniach et hashevet al hashmini or al hashnaim esar shem asa klum. Beit Hillel says, it's not the staff, it's not the act of pointing out that dedicates these animals. Because if by mistake he pointed to the 8th or the 12th, that doesn't work. Yeah, Beit Hillel say, look, mistaken dedication doesn't work on the 8th and the 12th. It only works on the 9th and the 11th. It only works when one off. And Beit Hillel are going to go and appeal to the pasuk. Eile chatuv shekideshet asiri. Eile katuv shekideshet asiri. It's the text. It's the katuv. It's the Torah, which dedicated the 10th, has also dedicated hu kideshet atishivet achadesret. The text which dedicated the 10th, has also dedicated the 9th and the 11th. Beit Hillel are going to rely on the Sifra. They're going to say, look, we learned from the Sifra that the 9th and the 11th are included. It's not the act of pointing out the animal with the staff, i.e., it's not the erroneous act that creates the dedication, it's the drush from the pasuk, or actually what they're saying is the pasuk itself. They are saying it's the pasuk itself, but actually we're relying on the drush from the pasuk. And maybe we can take away from this the fact that Beit Hillel, of course, are connected to, they're connected to the rabbis, right? So the authors of the Sifra, who are building the whole of rabbinic Judaism on drush from the text, these are essentially the heirs of Beit Hillel, and you can see in the words of Beit Hillel now that they're anticipating all of rabbinic innovation and development in the next, certainly the next 200-300 years, but of course it's going on still today.